Are we living in an AI revolution or, honestly, just a giant reality distortion field? Hey everyone, and welcome back. For all of you focused learners out there who just want the pure, unfiltered data, you are exactly where you need to be. Today, we've got a massive explainer covering the incredibly dynamic data drops from July 6, 2026. We're looking at a day that fundamentally shifts how we understand artificial intelligence. We're covering the whole shebang, from deep space science and hardware breakthroughs right down to shifting global regulations and the very real impact on your actual job. My promise to you today is simple. We're going to cut straight through the noise, skip the endless marketing hype, and reveal exactly what the hard science and economic data are actually saying.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this is literally the billion-dollar question right now. Currently, nearly 70% of consumers believe AI can solve almost any problem flawlessly. I mean, over the past few years, we've basically been sold a vision of AI as this infallible, all-knowing oracle. But when we look at the empirical data we're seeing on the ground today, a very stark contrast is emerging between those sky-high public expectations and the actual practical utility of these models.
There is a massive, and I mean massive, dividing line between the consumer AI bubble, the world of conversational chatbots, endless SEO generation, and the assumption of just seamless, magical automation, and the incredibly demanding realities of scientific discovery and rigorous lab work. The data from today proves that transitioning from a fun consumer tool to a scientifically reliable instrument is incredibly difficult. And we have a perfect real-world case study to show exactly why.
Take a look at this. The Southwest Research Institute, or SwRI, just published a peer-reviewed study evaluating 8 of the leading AI-generated lunar crater catalogs. Now, during their initial training phases, these AI models boasted some incredibly impressive performance metrics. They looked absolutely phenomenal on paper. But the SwRI findings revealed a staggering 42% accuracy drop-off when the models were tasked with mapping actual crater sizes and locations against human-mapped data. The AI frequently and massively miscalculated these geographic features when it was actually tested in the wild.
So why does this matter so much? Well, because these specific crater sizes are used by astronomers to calculate the entire geological history and surface age of a planet. If the AI gets the craters wrong, our whole understanding of planetary dating gets completely skewed. What developers are learning the hard way is that they simply cannot blindly trust the output of pure computer vision models for this kind of rigorous work. To actually build what we call science-ready databases, there's a very specific instruction set required. Developers must explicitly instruct models to cross-reference raw pixel data with known topographical physics. It requires robust, hard-coded architectural constraints and rigorous human validation. The AI just isn't ready to replace human astronomers on its own.
And, we're seeing similar friction outside of the hard sciences, too. Even in media applications, the operational transition is proving really complex. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation just began piloting generative AI writing tools directly inside their newsroom platforms. But this isn't happening without major internal scrutiny. Both journalist unions and ethics boards are raising serious red flags. They're specifically pointing out the severe risks of AI hallucinations when reporting on extraordinary, fast-moving live events. Because when public trust is on the line, that tension between breaking news speed and factual integrity becomes a massive operational hurdle.
So the crucial point is, while the software battles hallucinations, the hardware is quietly preparing for an absolute paradigm shift. A new white paper released today by Huawei details a system-level architectural breakthrough designed to scale AI computing power by a staggering factor of 100 in the coming years. What makes this 100x scale so fascinating is exactly how they're achieving it. We are physically hitting the atomic wall. Transistors can only get so small before physics literally gets in the way of traditional manufacturing. Compounding this, due to intense geopolitical supply chain constraints, engineers can't always rely on having access to the absolute latest Western lithography processes anyway. So instead, they are completely shifting their focus to advanced packaging and 3D chip stacking. They're bypassing raw manufacturing limits by changing the architecture itself. The entire industry is pivoting away from just building models with massive raw parameter sizes and instead focusing purely on inference efficiency, making these models drastically cheaper, faster, and much less power-hungry to run.
And this leap in efficient compute power perfectly fuels the next massive trend, the era of core agents. The software engineering industry is fundamentally shifting right now. We're moving rapidly away from isolated conversational chatbots. The new focus is entirely on production-ready enterprise agents. We're talking about systems built directly into back-end workflows to autonomously handle complex tasks. Things like autonomous cybersecurity triage, automated code reviews, and deep financial reconciliation workflows. The detailed instruction for enterprises here is incredibly strict. Integrating these agents successfully requires establishing strict API permissions and fully sandboxed environments for the AI to operate safely within your backend.
These core components reveal that agents aren't just basic text generators anymore. These autonomous AI agents have perception, memory, and action execution capabilities. They execute complex, multi-step tasks under the careful supervision of broader software frameworks. And honestly, if you want to know where the smart money is going, this is exactly where venture capital is aggressively flowing right now.
To put a number on that trend, just look at Tactile. This German-American fintech startup just announced a massive funding round to the tune of $110 million. Their goal? Building what they call agent-first banking platforms. These platforms allow traditional banks to take highly complex back-end workflows like credit decision-making and risk assessment and delegate them entirely to AI agents. It's a fundamental rewiring of corporate infrastructure.
Now, hearing about AI taking over complex financial decisions naturally brings us to the socioeconomic impact, specifically jobs. And here is where the data completely flips the mainstream narrative. It's kind of ironic. Just 18 months ago, tech titans were warning of an impending job apocalypse. Now, top tech executives and Wall Street meters, including folks over at OpenAI and Anthropic, are surprisingly retracting those apocalyptic doomsday job market forecasts. The tone has shifted completely away from the idea that AI will wipe out massive swaths of the workforce.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the dramatic shift it shows. This is from a newly cited EY-Parthenon survey tracking CEO expectations. In early 2025, a massive 46% of CEOs expected major AI-driven job losses, but jumped to mid-2026, and that number has plummeted to just 20%. The panic is rapidly subsiding as the reality of integration sets in.
In fact, the truth is actually the exact opposite of those doomsday predictions. Data from workforce intelligence firms reveals a fascinating, even shocking metric. Companies that are aggressively investing in and integrating AI tools haven't decimated their workforces at all. Instead, they've actually expanded their overall human staffing levels by a benchmark of roughly 10%. No way, right? But it's true.
So why on earth are they hiring more humans? Well, because when you integrate powerful AI core agents into your backend, the volume of data generated grows exponentially. Humans are heavily required to manage, supervise, and act upon this massive influx of information. The operational instruction for managers is super clear. You must pivot your workforce from raw data generation to data curation and strategic oversight. Companies are having to aggressively retrain and expand their human teams just to keep up with the workflows these AI tools are unlocking. It turns out, AI doesn't replace the human. It demands a more highly trained human in the loop.
While corporations are busy figuring out their internal workflows, the global political landscape is simultaneously grappling with who actually gets to set the rules. Right now in Geneva, the United Nations is hosting its first ever global dialogue on AI governance. What we're seeing here is an objective shift in global power dynamics. The UN is making a concrete attempt to wrest exclusive regulatory control away from big tech corporations. They are explicitly aiming to give an equal voice to the global south in how this technology is fundamentally managed moving forward.
And the urgency at the UN stems from a massive global AI divide. To put this into perspective, currently only 32 nations have specialized AI data centers. But more critically, the United States currently controls roughly 75% of the top AI supercomputers. Developing nations are finding themselves highly exposed to the economic disruptions of AI without owning any of the underlying infrastructure. The dialogue in Geneva is squarely focused on rectifying this immense imbalance. Let's move to and see how this builds into concrete legal frameworks, particularly over in Europe. The EU AI Act enforcement timelines are rapidly solidifying. By December 2026, we're going to see a strict, heavily enforced ban across the EU on AI tools designed to generate non-consensual explicit content or deepfakes. However, the implementation for complex, high-risk standalone AI systems, like those used in critical medical or infrastructure settings, has been pushed back to December 2027. Regulators literally needed to postpone this to properly resolve overlapping safety laws, which just goes to show how complicated enforcing these guardrails really is in practice.
Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. When UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres opened the dialogue in Geneva, he framed this entire technological shift with a simple yet totally provocative question. Will humanity govern AI together, or will we let it govern us?
As we've seen today, from lunar craters to banking agents, the tech is moving at lightning speed. But the hard science, the human workforce, and global regulators are finally pushing back to shape its reality. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions, and I will see you next time.